Welcome to Superhuman Customs, everybody. I'm Steven Human. If you're new to the channel, all I do is customize action figures, generally McFarlane figures, and I create new characters out of old ones. I paint things up, spruce things up. We just have a lot of fun here, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. Today we got something really simple. This is Nekron from the Blackest Night wave. And my son, Sam, my 13-year-old, he bought this guy. I think he got it for Christmas or something, but he's wanted me to make him much more necrotic and gross, like how I did like years ago, the Solomon Grundy figure. He wants him to look more zombie-ish, more just like a dead zombie sort of guy. So that's what we're gonna do. It's gonna be a simple repaint. We're just gonna go through and add some grossness and some reds and things. We're gonna add some chains, because we have those leftover chains from when we did the spawn. So we're just gonna make Nekron look cool. So let's dive in. This guy already has a pretty great wash to him. So what we're gonna start out with is I'm gonna get some red paint that's been really watered down. Ooh, that's probably even too, no. Wanna get it nice and watered down. So I just added a little bit of extra water, and I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna add that in here. So this is gonna be kind of our first thing, is just to add some redness to a lot of these areas, and just to accent that. So I'm gonna do it all over. I'm gonna do it on his face, and see that's a little bit too much, so just get some extra water and just go like this. And we'll darken it up, we'll add a little bit more gray, but this will give our first little hint of, you know, grossness. While the red is drying, I'm gonna go over his side and I'm gonna add some silver to it so that I can have a much more metallic look. Because right now it's just a matte black. I'm gonna add first a layer of the really cheap silver that I've got, and then we'll go through with a good Vallejo silver. This will add a good metallic sheen to it though. Now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take my green shade that I've used in my green lanterns, and we're just gonna go through a few areas, and we're just gonna add a little bit of green, just to make things look just rotten and gross. And this doesn't have to be a lot of stuff that you hit, but it will do some stuff to it. It will make it have this grossness. So, you know, this is a personal choice as to how much or how little of any of this stuff you wanna do. But Sam wants him to look gross, so I'm gonna make him look gross. He wants him to have kind of what I did with Solomon Grundy. If you haven't seen that video, look it up, that was a fun one. And so we are gonna go through and add some green. What I'm really trying to do with the green is get into some of these crevices, because that's where it'll have the most impact. So in some of these lines on the shoulders and in the biceps and things, putting a little bit of green in there will really look cool. So try and focus on those areas and you'll get the best impact out of it. Now I'm gonna do the same thing with a yellow. So I've watered down this yellow, and I'm just gonna hit some areas here. This is just all about adding just some different colors, because obviously we're gonna go over with a dry brush and lighten some of this up, but this is just gonna give us some nice base of just different rotten feeling colors to everything. You can highlight what you want, touch with your finger, you know, make it more or less. But this is just gonna make him look the way we want him to look, which is dead. We want him to look dead. Before we get in with the white, I'm gonna take some flesh tone. I'm just gonna dust it off in the toilet paper here. And we're gonna do a dry brush of the flesh tone first. This is gonna mute everything that we've done just a little bit. And again, add another layer before we get to the white that will allow us to lighten him up a little bit. And it'll add another layer of grossness. So you can see how it's already starting to lighten him up as the little dregs of the paint are left behind. The key to a good dry brush is, you know, get it off in the toilet paper and use a crappy brush. Like you can see this brush is jacked up. I've used it for dry brushing a lot, and so it's jacked up, but it does a great job So same thing with the white as we did. Oop, a little bit too much. And just go over with the dry brush. And it will catch the edges, all the edges. That's what we want. And I'm actually going to go over all of him, including his jacket, with the white dry brush in order to really make things stand out. So I'm going to get some here, just as I did with the flesh tone, dust it off, and then hit these edges. And it's going to do the same thing. See, look at that. It starts to grab those edges, highlight everything, add personality to the whole figure. Since contrast is always the name of the game, I'm going to do a little bit of bone white here on these bone spurs that he's got in his chest, just to make them stand out a little bit more as bone. Doesn't take much. I don't want to cover up all of the goodness we got there, but if it can become clear that this is bone, then it's going to make him look that much cooler. You can put some on the teeth too if you want. Just kind of depends on how far you want to go, but having these rib bones actually look like rib bones will just add to the aesthetic, the overall of the character. Now before I get into shading and stuff, I'm going to go through again with a little bit of red that's been super watered down, and I'm going to hit just in these areas here, these little crevices, just to add a little bit more. So that's like you're looking deep into him where it's still moist and bloody and gross. While the red's drying, I'm going to take some gunmetal gray and I'm going to go over the pants here. Really light coat. Because I want this to have a metallic feel too. I mean, it's got these little segments, so it's got like a metallic, like it should be metal. And this will be far less, it won't be silver, obviously, but it's going to give it a really good shine. And that's what we want. And then down here on the boots, we can add more if we want, because it's got different sections. That'll be personal preference. I'll look and see what I want to do. But this is giving me the look that I want. Now, before we move on to the shading, I'm going to go through with a little bit of glow-in-the-dark paint. Just the green stuff that we've got. And I'm going to just mush some around in here, because that's going to give us, again, just another disgusting layer of goodness. Maybe make it look a little bit wetter, like the heart and stuff. We want it to have a moist look, and this will do that. Keep things kind of shiny. And shiny is good, because that will allow us to have it be that it looks gross. That is our word for today, gross. We want him to look gross. So the more stuff you can do to make him look gross, the better off you are going to be. We've lightened him up in all the key areas, but now we need to darken him a little bit. Put a little bit of wash in the crevices here. Not over the whole thing, because we want to keep the whites that have been brought out in the dry brush. We want the little wrinkles to come through and to be dark. And that will give even more contrast to our Nekron. If I can get any on the brush here. I'm running out of this game wash. I've had this same thing for 2 years now, and it's starting to run out. Now we're just going to put on some of the final little touches, finishing touches here. I've got some silver. We're just going to go over his symbol here, lighten it up. And as you can see, I've been working on playing around with the chains. And so I'm gonna cut those, and we'll see how they look. They're a little bit shiny, so I'm gonna ding them up a little bit, but that will be our next step for now. Let's just get this symbol nice and bright, and then we'll worry about the rest. Then I'm taking this same lighter silver and I'm just going over the bottom part of this blade, just so that there's a contrast between the two silvers. And so it's nice and simple. Just get a little bit on the brush and go through and make it happen. And just for contrast's sake, I'm going to go through and I'm going to lighten up the silver here on this middle, like metal thing he's got in his boot. I just think it'll just make things stand out a little bit. It's not going to be a lot. I'm not going to make it a really bright silver. It's just going to be light. But as you can see, it will just make things stand out a little bit, and that's what I want. The key is hitting these kinds of details just enough to be able to make it so that the eye is not necessarily drawn to them, but that it becomes a part of the whole. And this is how you do it, just with some small things like this. You can do all of them if you want, or just the middle one. It's your call. So what I've done is I've cut the chain, and I've got a little piece here that's got a kind of an opening, and I'm going to try and get this so that it goes around here. Oh, without dropping it. Probably will need a pair of tweezers or something like this, but I'll get it on there and then I'll bring the rest of the chain up and we'll clamp it in place. But I need to concentrate in order to get it on there, so I'll come back after this is done. So I've clamped it in place, and now I'm just going to do a drop of super glue on it just to add a little bit of extra protection. And then the chain should be in place forever. And the last thing we're going to do is I'm going to put some wash on these chains to ding them up. They're a little bit too shiny. I want them to look like they've been through it. So I'm just going to add some wash to them and make them so that they've got just some black highlights that will help them to match the figure. As you can see, I added a second chain over here, and I just used tweezers to get them in place and glue them in place. And I think Nekron is about done. And there we have it. A nice simple custom that really makes this figure just shine. I mean, you can see all the details. The whites, he looks grosser. He looks like he's a zombie and not just this gray mass. This is the sort of thing that will elevate your figures if you choose to do this. It's simple, it takes a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, but it really is worth it if you want to turn these into little works of art, which is what I like to do, which is why I do this. So thank you all for watching. I appreciate it. Check out StephenHeumann.com for all of my sci-fi thriller novels, and Quimbleys.com for your board game needs. And yeah, I'll see you guys with the next custom. Have fun.